we wanted the opportunity to talk about a few things that are have been, but buzzing around for I would say the last 24 months, but just I'm seeing more and more and more of this coming to the forefront, and so wanted to have an opportunity and a channel where some great women could talk about things that we have experienced and get advice from folks who have kind of seen that whole trajectory of change. I know we talk about really the changing of the tides. Megan, I think you just um, mentioned that as well. But I think the what I'd love to do first is thanks again everyone for joining. We're really excited about the panel today, but would love for our panelists to introduce themselves. Kathy, would you like to start?
Sure. And good morning, everyone. I guess it is still morning. Yes, it's still morning. So good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you. Thanks, Jen, for asking me to be part of the discussion today. Um, Kathy Harris started my career as a CPA many years ago, back when there were big eight, not just big four firms. And moved from there to investment banking, where I spent about 10 years with a firm here in Nashville that really grew up alongside the for-profit healthcare industry. I was bitten with the venture capital bug somewhere along the way there and ended up joining a mezz debt player here in Nashville, and then moved into venture capital in Atlanta with Nora Mosley Partners. Firm's been around about 40 years and invested in healthcare and software, primarily technology. And from there, moved to a fast-growing digital health and wellness company founded by the founder of WebMD. And he lured me in, and I ended up heading up the M&A group there for over 10 years, focused on making acquisitions across the provider, enterprise, and life sciences space. Made about 15 acquisitions during that time frame, and helped the company raise capital, and did the SPAC, now a dirty word, but at the time it wasn't, did the SPAC and IPO route. And after about a 40-year career last year, decided it was time to move on to the next chapter. And there was actually retirement in that narrative somewhere, which is a little bit of a joke now when I look back on that, because I'm just as busy now, but enjoying everything I do. And that is serving on the board of Kindbody, a fertility and family building company, 32 clinics nationwide, run by dynamite female Gina Bartesi. I've been on women's health boards for the last 12 years and certainly enjoyed that. And it was interesting to see how we can now talk about a lot of things around women's health that we didn't talk about except in hushed tones for many years. I'm also on the advisory board of a fintech healthcare company, early stage, and then an advisor to Claritas Health Ventures. Claritas is a 25-year-old venture capital firm based in Nashville, focused on healthcare and software investing. And then I get to enjoy spending time with Jen too, as an advisor to Buffkin Baker. So I'm not retired, as you can see, but
You are far from retired.
Definitely enjoying this part of my life, and it's good to be with you today.
That's great, thanks. Elise?
Good morning. Yes, my name is Elise Bernard, and I'm currently the president at Wellstar Cobb Hospital, which is located in the Atlanta area. And I was counting, I've been in healthcare, in hospital operations for the past 24 years. My background in terms of education is accounting. So I have a BBA in accounting, did the CPA exam. And then when I started working straight out of college in Orlando, I started off my career with Advent Health, which is based in Orlando, Florida. And I started off doing finance, and then, had opportunities to go and work in revenue cycle, physician practice management, strategy, and then fell into operations, where I found my passion. I just love bringing together all the different departments and people, providers, physicians, team members to provide care for patients. So started my career at Advent Health, spent about 17 years there. And then I was recruited to go to Fredericksburg, Virginia to work with the health system there. And then last fall, I got recruited by Wellstar to come here. So I've just moved, quote unquote, in the past 7 or 8 months to the Atlanta area, and really excited to be able to be here and be part of this conversation with all of you.
Great. We're excited to have you.
Thank you.
Tammy.
Good morning, Jen. Thank you for having me. This is exciting. It's exciting to see all these women on here talking about this topic. I actually started out my career as a nurse and then found a love for technology and made that transition through working with McKesson, those of you that remember McKesson back in the day, and navigating that, just navigating 3 kids and traveling all over the country doing that, and then moved back into a leadership role in the health system that I had worked in previously as a nurse and a nurse leader, and then really missed consulting, and so returned to that with my own company, and then working with some of the largest healthcare systems in the country. Investor-owned healthcare systems. And then eventually with my own company, we have partnered with the Department of Defense on the modernization of the EHR for our veterans, and that's been exciting. And then, of course, COVID hit, pivoted a little bit away from that. And during that time thought, where do all the small business owners go if they don't have a brick and mortar? And so I opened a co-working space for women here in Franklin, Tennessee, and I'm excited to watch that grow. But really just my passion through this whole trajectory has been working with physicians and executive leadership in the healthcare space to help them transition through large technology initiatives or just large initiatives in general that require significant change, whether it's in culture or technology, and helping guide them through that process has been really kind of what's brought me to this point. So excited to see what's next.
Yeah, no, that's great. I again appreciate you all taking time. I know you have busy schedules. Even in retirement, Kathy, I know you have a busy schedule. And Megan and I it's been an honor to kind of work through our careers. We both had really great female leadership and mentorship. We also had great male. This is not a male bashing session here. We've had great males in our lives, in our careers, that have kind of helped us get to where we are as well. But it's just been a constant topic and really on our minds about, why and when and how do we get there? Let's lean on each other. I'm a huge believer in women, supporting women, and we need to kind of stick together and cheer each other on here. But even in 2023, with all the crazy changes that are happening in our world, women still face challenges to their authority and to their success. And it's greater than really what our male counterparts face. That's reality. And I was reading this article about women. It's innate in us to be, yes, we're detailed, and yes, we're caring. We have a caretaker personality naturally, but we also over years and years of studies, we as female leaders increase productivity. Collaboration is higher, but still today, only 10% of Fortune 500 companies are led by females. And so there's a movement, there's a wave that's been happening for a while, but I feel like now more than ever, it's important for us to bring it to light and really help each other out. Again, leading by example, Kathy and Tammy and Elise, to help others kind of pave the way to where you are. So again, appreciate everyone joining, but I wanted to kind of go through some questions that I know, just kind of surveying around some folks that they would really like to hear from you, kind of how you got to where you are. So I would like to kick off the first question, Kathy, if you want to start us with, what is your opinion on the importance of female leadership in today's organizations?
Well, Jen, I mean, you just mentioned it, in that there are numerous studies, and I actually Googled it yesterday, And there are many, many studies that show that companies perform better who have women in leadership. And so that should be a no-brainer, right? You should want to have plenty of women in leadership on your board. But that's not necessarily the case. I mean, it's all, again, these studies show that, to your point, Jen, employees are happier, morale is better when there are women in leadership and some diversity, just period, diversity.
Right.
So, I think that all we can do is continue to use our networks, use our relationships to try to get women in more positions of power on boards. Plenty of boards have at least one female now. Although I heard a really interesting stat last year, I think, so it may be a little bit dated now. There are still more board members named John than women on boards in total. So that's there's still work to do, but we're closer. But I think boards need to look up and say, we need 2 women, we need 3 women. I mean, we need our board to look like our customer base. And I think healthcare actually is doing a pretty good job of that overall. But it's absolutely essential to, represent your customer base, to perform better, be more profitable, etc. I mean, there's lots of evidence that shows why you want women involved.
Sure. Elise, anything to add?
I mean, you touched on it's the diversity of thought. It's everything we've shared. And I think it's also important as we continue to create this change and influence, broader women representation on boards. I think and in leadership, it's important to just have more so that others can see that it is possible. So I think it's the inspirational part of it and to show people that it's possible. And Kathy, you touched on it. You didn't go deep into it, but just whatever it is that any business is trying to do, sell, care for, there's going to be a woman involved. And so just from a success of the organization standpoint, why wouldn't they want to have the voice of one of their key customers at the table, helping to design, guide, lead? So, for all these reasons, it just makes sense. So.
No, for sure. Tammy, what are your thoughts?
I think women have just been juggling sort of the multitasking, the critical thinking skills, covering all the bases. And I think that those are strong skill sets for any leader in any organization. I also think women are more in a crisis, are I think easier. And I just, with post-COVID and a younger generation, they are demanding a more work-life balance, between personal and professional. And I think that's a model that women have been navigating for years. And so for this next generation that's coming along, I think it's essential that you have women in leadership who can help them and can relate to that
Yes,
on a leadership team.
Absolutely. So you all have been in many different organizations and in different settings. What would you say are, if you had to kind of summarize in your own experience, some of the biggest challenges that you think females have today in organizations?
Start off by sharing that.
No, go ahead, Elise.
I'll just share that I think there are 2 things that come to mind. Number one, I think women believing that it is possible for them. So, and I don't say that in a judgy way, but I think sometimes as women, we have almost an imposter syndrome around, well, should I, can I? So, my belief is always remove your own personal barriers. So I think that can be challenging. I've talked with, women who I think have potential, and it's almost like the first thing is, well, I don't think I can do it. Well, are you sure? There's this, pulling back. Whereas when you talk to men about potential, they're like, yeah, I've got a list of all the things I was waiting for you to come and talk to me. So, I think a challenge can be, even just for us as women, just believing it's real. We really are talented. We have that ability. And number 2, I think, a challenge is just the underestimation that can sometimes happen for women for various reasons. And I think that just holds people back. It's the stereotypes, it's the biases that we don't necessarily attack and really address to help educate people to think differently. So, I just think people's perspectives that don't get challenged or checked, if you will, just to have them to continue to believe their biases and beliefs. So I think the more that we can challenge those things, and again, put women in leadership to refute what people believe, is really important.
Yeah, well, that's good. I saw some of that right after I had my child, and trying to juggle, and the assumption that she's really busy, she probably can't handle this right now. I may have sweet potatoes on my ear on the way in, and we may have, all kinds of things happening with the kids, but you, we are positioned, and again, it's this innate, um, great quality that we all have to handle and to juggle and to do a lot more than we can. So I think, to your point, bringing awareness to the previous assumptions of what we can and can't do, we own that, and we need to continue owning that. So
There's actually a stat on that. After I was having one of my kids, I don't remember which one, but there's a stat as it relates to women and their intelligence. And they said that actually women, after they've had children, I think it's like 20% higher cognitive ability. So, I mean, really, there's an advantage there.
before, is that before or after they start sleeping?
Yeah.
That's good to hear, Elise, because it didn't always feel that way.
I can't blame fogginess on my brain anymore, but I still like to. But Tammy, what are your thoughts on the challenges, even that you face or that you feel like females face today?
I I'm not sure how popular this answer is going to be, but I do think that there are times, and I have a 20-year-old daughter also. So this is a conversation that we have often. And there are times I feel like where we are hurting each other, where in that push to make space for other women at the table, we sometimes, depending on personality or pushing forward without the right relationships in place, we're actually hurting. We're creating some of those biases, I feel like sometimes. And then if you're in a male dominated industry, which IT, which I have been in for years, is a male dominated. And I think sometimes we hurt each other in that role. And I just think we need to be cognizant of it, of how we make that push and that advocacy for other women at the table, that we're not doing it in a way that is contributing to those biases or creating division.
That's good.
Mhm.
Kathy?
Yeah, so I've, having most of my career spent in finance and investments, that's the lens that I use a lot to sort of measure where we are. And the percentage of female run businesses who raised venture capital in a given year is 2%. TWO, 2%. And that's getting better, but just think how long, it could take. A female co-founder in the founding mix can get 16.5%. So that just shows when there are men around the female co-founder, they're attracting more venture capital. So what can we do about that? And and two, I think the bar is just higher for women who are starting their company. I mean, it's hard. I think it's harder for women to say, I'm going to build a growth company here. I'll worry about profitability later, but I want top line. Men can say that all day long. And I've heard them say it over the years, sitting on the side of the table that's writing the checks. So I think it takes someone, you heard me mention Kind Body, but our founder has raised $300 million in capital, and she's been adamant about whether it's an investment banker, a consultant, an investor, you need to bring a woman to the table who's a decision maker, and then we'll talk about you being involved with my company.
Sure.
Our board makeup is 1 man, 6 women. And I don't really know if there's another board that looks like that, but we're very proud of it. And I think, again, to sort of overcome this 2% or sub 10% rut that we're in. It's going to take women who have been through the process before that says, hey, you know what? I disagree. I need women at the table. I need women decision makers in my life helping with my business. And so it's just, as we've all talked about, as we'll continue to talk about probably, it's just waving the flag and saying, hey, we have, I have a great business here. Take a hard look at it.
Good. That's really good. So you have all been through different stages again in companies and your trajectory of growth throughout your career. How, what tangible or tactical things that you would suggest or advice that you would give for women trying to elevate their positions in a male dominated organization? Elise, you want to start?
Sure. First thing I would say is, number one, get results. Make sure you're good at what you do. The bar is higher for women, and just go for it and knock it out of the park and be someone who they just can't refuse, they can't help but promote. So I think it's important, number one, to be good at what you do and not just want the promotion for the promotion. And then I think partnering and networking within whatever organization you're in, because a lot of times decisions are made based on who knows you and knows about you. And so while it can feel inauthentic, it is important to have relationships which can then turn into opportunities. For me personally, and I didn't even realize it when I was younger, but a lot of the opportunities that came my way was because people would ask me to do things and I would just say yes, even if it was completely outside of my scope. And I didn't realize it till I was a little bit older, but it allowed people. And somebody said to me once, when you transition, because a lot of my background is finance, so people think of me as the finance person. But then I went and helped volunteer to do something related to a physician's practice at the hospital. And somebody said to me, wow, I was able to see you in a different way, in a different space. So I've taken you out of this hole I pegged you in, and the rest kind of became history. So just the willingness to say yes and to volunteer and get involved just really provides that exposure so that people can see you in a different way. So I think just connecting with people, saying yes as it's appropriate. We don't want to, be unbalanced, but and being comfortable to move forward with something, even if you can't see every step of the way. Some people have a plan of how it should be. I didn't have a plan, and it was probably very helpful for me because it allowed me to say yes to various things because I didn't feel like I was saying no to something I had already planned. So,
Sure.
and I think the rest follows.
Tammy, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think Elise touched on a couple of the ones that I would have shared. I think relationship management. I think asking for those opportunities, being open to new opportunities, and I think to your point, Elise, about letting people see you in a different light, taking on a different role. Sometimes the path is a little bit maybe not what you had envisioned for it to be, but I also think sometimes we get caught up sort of in what brought us to the table. And I think you need to focus on what you bring to the table and focus on delivery. Like Elise said, it's really not what got you there. It's what you do when you get there. And for me, that is the key is, she said it, execute, be confident and deliver. But relationship management is a key, male or female. I think that's tangible, male or female. It is about building relationships and people trusting you. They're giving you large projects. They run big businesses, and it's a lot of responsibility. And they need to know that they can trust you.
I like that. I like that table analogy there. No, that's really good. I do. I mean, we've all heard the saying, "Action speaks, louder than words." So I think that kind of plays into this a lot. Kathy, any suggestions there?
Well, I've definitely worked in male-dominated industries. When I was in investment banking, there was one other woman out of 10 of us. And interestingly enough, she was not my mentor. She was, I had a fabulous male mentor, but she didn't play it forward. And so there's a whole nother conversation around that, which we're not going to get into. And then in the venture capital business, I was one out of 8 people in my firm. So I've always just been me. I haven't tried to feel like I need to fit in a certain mold. And I do know a lot about sports though, because, when you go to lunch with these guys every day, you have to be able to talk about sports.
Yeah.
But, I think just not be fearful. And, we've all said relationship building. And when I first moved to Atlanta, um, I had to make friends. I had to make connections. I had to build relationships. And I remember going to one of my first networking events, and I walked in and it was just a sea of either khakis and blue shirts or suits. And I was like, okay, this should be interesting. And you know what? I just sort of said to myself, I bet anybody in here would rather talk to me than the other guy in the khaki pants and the blue shirt.
Yeah.
Smart.
So I went up to, probably the most prolific angel investor in Atlanta at the time, Sig Mosley, and started a conversation with him. And we're fast friends today.
Great.
If you do that, to everybody's point, you got to know what you're talking about when you make that introduction and you sort of like put yourself out there. And so it's just, everybody on this phone probably knows more about their subject matter than they even realize. And so just take the step. Jump into the abyss, especially if it's a male dominated industry, and show them what you know.
That's great. That's really great. Appreciate that. And so, I think if we look at today's organization, so Megan and I, for those of you who don't know this, we are retained executive search leaders, and we hear consistently, not breaking any HR rules. We have leaders from the delivery side of healthcare, but also the commercial side of healthcare, services side of healthcare, asking, hey, I know your job is to find the best, talent for what we need, but can you please bring us some female candidates? So it's a consistent ask that we see not only within organizations, but also within boards, which we'll get to a little later. But, what would you say are the kind of the attractive pieces of a female in general that organizations want? Because that's a question of, is it female just because of the look that's going to be on your website? Is that what you want to like look diverse? But what is it about, females today that organizations are drawn to? Tammy?
I think it's, we've talked about this throughout this conversation, but I think it's our ability to build relationships. A lot of times having women on a leadership team, you're able to sort of buffer some of those conversations. You cut out a little bit of the ego, and you a lot of times can be a bridge. I know, especially in large healthcare systems where it's one department, a lot of times against it's operations versus clinical or versus finance. And I think women are in a position, it's just in our nature to buffer and want to build those relationships and create collaboration that, eventually drive those results. I think that's what they're looking for, and your ability to sort of cut out the noise, focus on delivery, focus on relationships.
Great. That's great. Kathy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Tammy said. I do think that it's important that that women, when they get to the table, get to, whether it's interviewing for a C-level spot or whatever, that we do kind of peel back the onion and find out, is this employer just wanting you to check a box? Are they wanting to, again, have someone on their website? Is this a place that's going to be open to my potentially diverse way of thinking at times, diverse mind share? And so we all have to be careful that we're, again, getting in a situation that's a good fit, not just checking the box. Because I think when people kind of stretch either way, it's more of that, oh, well, yeah, we had to hire her there was a qualified man. That's the worst thing that could happen to us, because it kind of moves us back in the conversation again to the numbers versus the talent that's sitting in front of you. So I think we just all have to be, good stewards of the fact we got to the table, we can show them what we're about, but to make the right decision, that it's the right team and all the right, kind of all the right motivations behind those hires.
Elise, what are your thoughts?
Leadership is just such a people sport in my mind. And, to add on to what has been shared, I think there's a level of authenticity and vulnerability that opens the doors to that, relationship building, and that really makes people want to follow. And I think women do a really good job at that, just being vulnerable, authentic. And I think there's a level of courage that people want in organizations, in leadership, that I have seen a lot of women. Like, when I think about leaders that I've either worked for or that I have led, there is a deep level of courage that I think women can really tap into, especially around doing what's right, and thinking things through very broadly, systematically, from all angles. And I think that when you bring all of that together, along with performance and so forth, it's a really nice package when you get a woman as a leader.
Yeah, well, that's perfect. That's perfect. And so I think it, kind of brings us to another question. And we talked a little bit about the board, and now I get a lot of female colleagues asking, I don't even know where to start. How do I get on my first board? Like, what does that even look like? And do I have enough to bring to the table to even be attractive to, a board who's wanting to add female leadership? Again, just still making sure that it's not just checking that box, but, there are a lot of companies out there that wake up, 40 years later and say, we have a bunch of middle-aged white men with white hair, if they have hair still, on our board, and we don't want to be perceived as just that. So how do we change that? So my question to you would be, how did you get on your first board? And let's start there. Tammy, do you want to start?
Well, this is a new thing for me. I just had my first board meeting last night. So I'm the newbie to this.
It's fresh.
Yeah.
And it literally just came about. I was in a master class, and one of the women and taken my master class on traction was talking about the board that she was creating, sort of as a spinoff to another good friend of mine who's an entrepreneur with a wonderful cause called Strings for Hope for women that are survivors of domestic violence. And she started talking about that, and that she was looking for board members. And so, just I think to what one of the ladies mentioned earlier is, I volunteered. I said I would be happy to serve on that. Obviously, also having a women-owned, she saw me as someone who was interested in helping promote women, and she was like, "I would love that." Just my background. A range of experience. And so we had our first board meeting last night. So I would just say ask or volunteer, be open when conversations start down that path, listen for that opportunity, and go for it.
Elise?
So my first board, it was, again, of course, I didn't even know to think I wanted it, but just happened to be at an event. And again, just walking around, talking with people, finding out what they do, being able to share my story. And I ran into a gentleman who was the city manager. So it was a city type board for the town or the city that I was in. And he just said to me, "Would you like to be on our board? Would love to have your perspective." And I had no idea what I was saying yes to. But I said, sure, that sounds like it'd be interesting. I tried to have a learner mentality, and, it had nothing to do with my title at the time or anything. I mean, I think I was fairly young in leadership. It was just being in the place where people who are on boards are. So just also, what are we reading about? What are we submerging ourselves in terms of that community? And then things just happen. And it was a wonderful experience. And I find and I think this is why the important question is, how do you get on your first board? And I know Kathy's going to drive this home for us because she's an expert in this. But, you know, once you get on that first board, it just creates the opportunities to then connect with people and have them see what you do and then connect you to others. So I think it's that openness and willingness to do what we've never done before, and put yourself in the places where like-minded people are. So there are conferences related to boards and things like that. So.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I kind of cheated in that I got on my first board through being through my venture capital firm. You know, as a partner, we sat on a lot of boards, every board that we invest in. But my independent director roles in women's health, I got on the first one because I knew the CEO really well. The founder, CEO. We knew each other professionally and personally. And so she wanted somebody with finance expertise around the table early to figure out, you know, how do we grow our capital structure efficiently, to put the right strategic people around the table. So that's just what Elise said, in that, you know, you're going to bring a skill set to the table that the board needs or needs more of. And so just think about, I went to a board advanced course last year, and, you know, think about your superpower. What is it that you can bring to the table that will set you apart from other board members? And just drive that home, continue to drive that home, and then target the company that you want to be part of, or the industry. You know, maybe it's behavioral health within healthcare, but target specific companies. And again, just network around those companies. I guarantee there will be somebody in everyone's network that can get you closer to a board member or the CEO or a decision maker. And so it is, again, guess what? Relationships, and leveraging those relationships that I think are key to getting you on the right board. And one thing that I learned last year was, you know, don't discount going on an advisory board first, going on a nonprofit board, because there will be plenty of people around the table at a nonprofit board that are going to be decision makers about corporate boards. Or again, if you show, you know, if you kind of show your mettle on a nonprofit board, somebody's going to look at that and say, hey, you know what, that's something that I need around my board table. Same with an advisory role. Lots of times an advisory board can turn into a full-blown corporate board. And, you know, to be honest, it gives you a chance to see the team in action and see if you really want to take on kind of some of the fiduciary responsibilities that go along with a board by sitting first on an advisory board. So there's lots of ways that you can get to your first board. You know, as people always say to me, everyone went on their first board. So I would say just target the company, target the team. You know, there are lots of ways to do it, but again, build on relationships that you've made over the years. If people know you've made money for them, or you've add value to them some way, somehow, and people want that around them.
That's great. I love that. I love the idea, especially I remember early on in my career, the idea of sitting on a board was very foreign. And I just wanted to do that to unfortunately, to put it on my resume, to say, oh, I sit on a board here. And I joined a non-for-profit board. And I was at a time in my life where I wasn't really interested in it, in what they were doing. And I had just had a baby, and I didn't have time to, give my hours to them. And so I think my failure there, my first board, was just do it just to do it. So I love how you said, just make sure it's somewhere you want to be, and somewhere you want to spend your time, something that you're passionate about, because I do think that makes a huge difference.
Right.
Huge
Because you are getting married. I mean, you don't want to leave a board early. You have to have chemistry. with the other board members and particularly the C-level management team. And so, yeah, you have to think about it over the long run.
I think, but I would love to open this up for some questions. If any of you have questions, but I will say you have to unmute yourself because I do not have the ability to do that. So if anyone has questions, I'd love to open it up for a few before closing.
Some in the chat. Something's going on in the chat.
I included some notes as you all were talking, so feel free to change your quote if you would like. One question I have to get us started off is, for you personally, what's been the hardest thing that you've overcome to get to where you are today? I know we've talked about what other females have in general are facing today, but you personally, and what did that look like a little bit?
I'll go first. For me, it was becoming comfortable with my power. And I think when I was younger in my career, I thought power was a bad thing, or I'll say it like this: I didn't know how to manage and wield my power. And I had a wonderful CEO mentor. She was a physician and the CEO at the hospital, and she sensed it. And she said, "You seem uncomfortable asserting yourself." So, we talked it through. And she said to me, power that is not managed can actually be damaging. And so, just by virtue of the seat you are in, you need to be aware of that and comfortable with it. It's not an evil thing. It's not, taking away voice from anybody else, but there is a leadership responsibility around power and being aware of it, stepping into it and using it in a positive way. Because if I'm not aware of it, and just let it kind of flounder, and don't step fully into it, I could actually cause damage. And that was really powerful for me, to really realize, own it, step into it, and you can use it for good.
Yeah. And I'm going to think that, when I just think about, again, kind of the industries that I've been involved in, it is absolutely essential that you keep your head down and just keep working and keep focused and forget some of the noise that went on in the 80s and 90s with a female in a male dominated industry and all the stuff you had to listen to, and sometimes more than that. And so, it was just critical. Just keep your eye on the prize, do your job, again, prove your worth, show what you can do, and try to let everything else go. And that, it got progressively easier as I got older. And now it's kind of like, just dare me. Yeah. So I think that was kind of the hardest thing to navigate through my 20s and 30s in particular.
Amy, anything to add?
I would say for me, a couple of things. I think navigating mom guilt, as someone who traveled and being on the road 4 to 5 days a week, sometime from the times that my kids were younger all the way up until just in recent years. So I think navigating mom guilt is a real thing, and having open conversations, especially as my children got over. I also think, or as they got older, transitioning from being in a corporate world to an entrepreneur and stepping out on your own and sort of having that belief in yourself and that courage that someone touched on earlier, which I do think is a superpower for women. And, I think just making that transition from being a part of a team to being a solo owner, dissolving a partnership, having a special needs child, the list could go could go on. It feels like some days. So it's, but I'm old too.
No, you're not.
No, you're not.
Lots of challenges along the way, but you know what? We can do it, ladies. We can do it. It's just that courage.
Thank you guys for your authenticity in answering that question, because I know that's not always an easy question to answer.
It's so comforting and just just it's so great to hear, not that everyone has struggled, but it's just it's so interesting because I see a lot of the faces that are on here head nodding and kind of smirks and laughing because I'm sure we've all experienced a lot of different versions of kind of the same thing. I just, it's great that we have the opportunity to kind of come together like this. And I would say, before we jump to if any other questions are out there, you know, my encouragement and Megan, our encouragement for everyone is to surround yourself with strong women. Surround yourself with people who make you better. And one hard lesson I had to learn growing up in my work life in a male dominated industry, from trading desk as the only female to now I work in private equity, which is mostly males, is remembering that you have worth and you're there for a reason. But a hard thing is I used to try and be the smart person in the room to prove myself. Let me research this, and it's different to do that than come to the table with actual knowledge and experience. So my push would be for you to never try to be the smartest person in the room and surround yourself with females who can lead and teach you, but also support one another. Join female-led organizations. Join there's so many great organizations out there that are pushing for females to become, stronger leaders, stronger in their craft. So that would be my push for everyone on here, including myself today, is to remember that and to kind of take that forward. But we have about 10 minutes left before this shuts off. So does any other questions out there for our panelists? Anyone? All right. Well, again, appreciate everyone's time. And we are going to send this link to everyone if you want to share it, because this has been recorded. But Kathy, Elise, Tammy, can't thank you enough just for your knowledge and your wisdom and your ability and just willingness to share that with all of us. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining. Bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
we will we'll be doing another one of these probably next quarter. So just be on the lookout for an email. We're gonna keep it rolling here. So appreciate your time. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.